Most people think emotional detachment means someone does not care, that they are cold, unavailable, uninterested. But psychology tells a different story. Emotional detachment is rarely a lack of feeling. More often, it's about protection. It's a strategy the mind uses to avoid overwhelm, vulnerability, or pain. And once you understand what drives it, you begin to see it everywhere. By the end of this exploration, you will understand why emotional detachment develops, what happens in the brain when someone shuts down emotionally, and how this pattern shows up in relationships, friendships, and professional life. More importantly, you'll see how detachment can be both a shield and a limitation. At its core, emotional detachment is a regulation strategy. When emotions feel too intense or unsafe, the brain looks for ways to reduce their impact. Instead of expressing sadness, fear, or longing, it lowers the volume. This isn't random. When we experience emotional pain, areas like the amygdala activate, stress hormones rise, the nervous system prepares for threat. If these states occur repeatedly, the brain adapts. It searches for efficiency. One efficient solution is distance. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and control, can suppress emotional responses from deeper brain regions. Over time, this suppression becomes automatic. Instead of feeling fully, the person analyzes. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond logically. Have you ever met someone who can discuss deeply personal events with almost no visible emotion? That composure may not signal strength alone. It may signal long-practiced regulation. Emotional detachment often begins early. If someone grows up in an environment where emotions are dismissed, punished, or ignored, they learn quickly that vulnerability is risky. Expressing need may lead to rejection. Showing sadness may invite criticism. The safest solution becomes emotional minimization. Here's the surprising part. Emotional detachment can feel empowering at first. When others are overwhelmed by drama, the detached person remains steady. When conflicts escalate, they appear calm. This composure can be admired, but calm and connection are not the same thing. In relationships, emotional detachment may show up as a reluctance to discuss feelings. The person may avoid deep conversations. They may withdraw during conflict rather than engage. They may prefer independence over interdependence. If you've ever felt close to someone physically but distant emotionally, you've likely encountered this pattern. Pause for a moment. When someone pulls away emotionally, do you assume they don't care, or do you consider what they might be protecting themselves from? Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference. In reality, many emotionally detached individuals feel deeply. They simply struggle to tolerate the vulnerability that comes with expressing those feelings. The brain reinforces detachment because it reduces immediate discomfort. When someone avoids an emotional conversation, anxiety drops. That relief creates reinforcement. The nervous system learns that avoidance equals safety. Over time, the pattern strengthens. There's also a cognitive element. Some people intellectualize emotions instead of experiencing them. They explain why something happened. They analyze patterns. They discuss psychology. But they rarely sit in the raw sensation of sadness or fear. Understanding replaces feeling. In professional settings, emotional detachment can look like hyper-focus on tasks rather than people. A manager may prioritize results while avoiding personal connection. A colleague may remain polite but distant. Boundaries become walls. This can create efficiency, but it can also create isolation. Here's a subtle insight. Emotional detachment often coexists with a fear of dependency. Relying on others introduces uncertainty. If you don't attach deeply, you can't be deeply hurt. Distance becomes insurance. But insurance against pain is also distance from joy. Attachment science shows that secure relationships require emotional accessibility. When one partner consistently withdraws, the other may pursue harder. This creates a cycle. The more one distances, the more the other seeks reassurance. Have you ever noticed how emotional distance can intensify someone else's need for closeness? That dynamic is not accidental. It's a nervous system response to perceived loss. Detachment can also be situational. After heartbreak, betrayal, or significant stress, people may temporarily shut down. This allows recovery. It prevents emotional overload. In this context, detachment is adaptive. The problem arises when temporary shutdown becomes a permanent style. Chronic detachment flattens emotional range. Joy feels muted. Excitement feels restrained. Even success may not register deeply. The nervous system remains in a controlled state rather than a connected one. Does that resonate with you? Feeling stable yet slightly numb? Another layer involves identity. Some individuals pride themselves on being not emotional. They equate emotion with weakness. They associate vulnerability with loss of control. This belief system reinforces detachment. But emotion is not the opposite of strength. It is information. When you detach from emotion, you detach from internal guidance. You may struggle to identify what you truly want. Decisions become purely rational, lacking intuitive depth. Relationships may feel safe, but not fulfilling. There's also a social cost. Emotional presence builds trust. When someone consistently withholds emotional expression, others may feel unseen or unimportant. The detached person may not intend harm, but the impact is distance. Here is another surprising truth. Emotional detachment can be contagious. When one person withholds, the other may begin to mirror that behavior. Gradually, both partners operate at a surface level. Conversations become logistical. Intimacy decreases. Silence increases. Breaking this pattern requires awareness. The first step is noticing when you disconnect. Do you change the subject when conversations become personal? Do you feel discomfort when someone expresses strong emotion? Awareness creates choice. Emotional tolerance can be strengthened gradually. It does not require dramatic vulnerability overnight. It may begin with naming a simple feeling. I felt disappointed. I felt nervous. Small acknowledgments build capacity. The nervous system adapts through exposure. When you express emotion and survive the outcome, the brain updates its prediction. Vulnerability becomes less threatening. For those interacting with emotionally detached individuals, patience matters. Pressure often increases withdrawal. Calm curiosity is more effective than confrontation. Ask open questions, create space, observe consistency over time. However, it is also important to recognize limits. You cannot force someone into emotional availability. Change requires internal willingness. Emotional detachment is not a flaw to shame. It is a strategy that once served a purpose. It may have protected someone during chaos. It may have preserved stability in difficult environments. But strategies that protect us at one stage of life can restrict us at another. Imagine experiencing connection without fear of losing control. Imagine feeling sadness without needing to escape it. Imagine allowing joy to register fully without dampening it. That is not weakness. That is emotional range. The psychology behind emotional detachment reveals something compassionate. Most distance is rooted in self-protection, not malice. Most withdrawal is an attempt to manage internal overwhelm. Understanding this changes how you interpret behavior.
Instead of labeling someone as cold, you might see someone managing fear. Instead of judging yourself for shutting down, you might recognize an old habit trying to keep you safe. Growth does not require abandoning protection entirely. It requires updating it. Emotional awareness is not about dramatic expression. It's about honesty. It's about allowing yourself to feel without immediately suppressing, analyzing, or escaping. If this reflection resonates, consider where emotional distance appears in your life. Notice when you lean toward logic instead of feeling. Notice when conversations shift away from vulnerability. Share your thoughts below. Reflect on what emotional closeness means to you, and continue exploring the psychology behind everyday behavior, because understanding it transforms the way you connect with others and with yourself.